Love is in the air, except if you're an Alabama basketball fan. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. It is Sunday Funday, February 16th, 2025. We got a jam-packed show for you, ladies and gentlemen. Just because college football and the NFL have kind of gone idly by does not mean we are going to stop talking about content every single day. College football, way too early preseason SEC odds are out. Which bets do I like? Which ones do I hate? Who do I think could actually overexceed expectations and maybe even make it down to Atlanta? Which team in the SEC is the most predictable going into 2025? I also want to talk about the Cam Newton comparisons. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm bored of it. I'm tired of it. And we have to retire that narrative before it gets too far out of hand. And then college baseball kickstarted this past weekend, and we were graced with a moment that probably not even the college baseball gods themselves should have scripted better. But real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, link in the description. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and make sure you check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This episode is fueled by FANDUEL. Visit FANDUEL.com/SECU today and join in on the madness by getting started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. So really simple. Go bet on a game, lay down $5. You win that bet, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with the process. So what's not to love about the party? Join on in the madness today by signing up at FANDUEL.com/SECU. Okay. I had to go ahead and clear my ears real fast. You know when your ears sometimes get really plugged up with something because you had AirPods in and then you can't get them to pop? Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with right now. FANDUEL is just recently released its way too early preseason odds for the SEC. And I have my thoughts on them. Now, I love FANDUEL. We know we love FANDUEL. We have the partnership with FANDUEL. But there are definitely some teams that I think I'm a little bit more weary on than others. Real quickly, the teams that we won't be discussing, you have Kentucky coming in at plus 3,000 odds, 5,000 odds for Mississippi State. Vanderbilt at plus 30,000. Yeah, plus 30,000 odds. My apologies. Arkansas plus 12,000 odds. And Auburn at plus 3,500. Okay, now on to the actual teams. Texas at plus 210. I understand that seems a little high. I completely get it, and we're all going to put pressure on Arch Manning to have to deliver. And that's going to be the narrative around this. Well, you're putting all this hype around Arch. What if he doesn't deliver? That to me is not the case when you look at Texas at plus 210, the favorites in the SEC. It's more so giving credit to Steve Sarkisian and his staff. They're losing Quinn Ewers, 4 offensive linemen, 4 receivers, multiple defensive players, including a Jim Thorpe Award-winning defensive back in Jahdae Barron, multiple defensive linemen, and nobody is really nervous out there. You talk to people in Austin, they're excited about spring football to kickstart year 2 in the SEC. So many people are believing that this team is only getting started, and largely it's due to the fact of what they've been able to bring in the transfer portal, the recruiting trail, and retaining staff members. Kyle Flood's not going anywhere. AJ Milby, the quarterback coach, isn't going anywhere. Those who run the practices and ensure that everyone is prepared aren't going anywhere. And Sark has done a good job of prioritizing the offensive and defensive line play over the last 2 years in the Big 12 to where when they stepped foot in the SEC, I try to warn people and say, don't doubt Texas. But they're coming from the Big 12, Cole. How can you be? Well, because they were masquerading as a Big 12 team. They really were built to be in the SEC a year prior, which is why they went to Atlanta, which is why they went to the college football playoff, and why they went down to the wire against Ohio State. They were built in the trenches. They have a top 5 recruiting class returning, a number 1 recruiting class coming on in, solid defense headlined by All-American talents like Ant Hill, Colin Simmons, Mookie Taft. You also realize that the pieces in play are only going to get better with time offensively. So DeAndre Moore, who was a wide receiver 4, is going to have to step on up as a wide receiver 2. And I believe he can. Ryan Wingo was right alongside Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams. And you can throw in Jeremiah Smith for top-tier talent of the 2024 recruiting class. He's going to be a legit number 1 potentially. You also are going to bring in more players via the portal. And the home and away matchups, you just switch some things up. Ohio State now replaces Michigan. It's the same schedule, and you went 11-1 in. I think this team is too good in personnel to fail on paper. And Steve Sarkisian, he's due. If Ryan Day can win a national championship, Steve Sarkisian can get the job done. I'm not doubting Texas. I understand why plus 210 is the reason. I also understand why Georgia at plus 390 is the reason. It's a tad low for my liking, if I'm just being completely honest, which means you should probably take the odds now because they'll be better in your favor with it. I get it. I understand why we are talking about Georgia as plus 390. It's a new quarterback. It's a bunch of new weapons. It's a new offensive line. It's 6 new defensive starters. But can we also just put pause on the whole narrative? It's Georgia. Like, at this point, the way that we talked about Nick Saban and Alabama every single year, showing on up to Atlanta, red carpet rolled on out, that's Georgia. Until proven otherwise, why are we going to doubt them? They're a company that feels like the one that people will apply to while still trying to get the promotion at the current job, because that's how much people believe in the process. They know if they join this company, they're going to be better off and be able to retire early because of who is in running the CEO, who is the CFO, who is the COO. Glenn Schumann creates linebackers like no one's business. Kirby Smart, exceptional when it comes to recruiting. Phenomenal playmaker. Everything that you want to see when it comes to the X's and O's, he's got down. He's going to be fine on the offensive line. They're bringing in brand new players. And the other thing that's really, really important is that it's been 2 years since Georgia played for a national championship with teams that I would say are, when fully healthy, good enough to win it all. Don't kid yourself and tell me that if you had Carson Beck playing in that Notre Dame matchup against the Sugar Bowl, it wouldn't have been closer. I think it would have. I think that Georgia probably still would have lost, but it would have been closer. Tell me in 2023, if they beat Alabama, they're not a three-peat dynasty. Sorry, I don't believe it. Now you got them pissed off. Now you got everybody inside that building pissed off. They know what the expectations are. They know what the goals are. So long as Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas can hit it at wide receiver, plus you return Oscar Delp, Nate Frazier, whoever is your starting quarterback, for now, I'm going to say it's Gunnar Stockton. And maybe like a young guy, CJ Wiley or Talon Taylor hits. Yeah, good luck college football. Georgia's not slowing down. You can almost guarantee that they're punching their ticket to Atlanta. Now, the next 4 teams are really interesting to me. And every single one of them has a fault. Let's start with Tennessee at plus 700. I'm at a crossroads with Tennessee. I really am. Because I like Tennessee. I like what the Vols are doing. I believe in Josh Heupel. One hand, everything that they have laid down in the foundation purposes is built for the long run. I think this team is talented. I think this team knows what it needs. I think that they have an identity. I think they want to get back to that identity defensively, which is why they extended Tim Banks last season. I love the pieces they have returning on defense. Yes, you're losing James Pierce. Yes, you're losing your linebacker play, but you still have Boo Carter on the back end. You still have very talented front 7 players that guys were rotational options. They're going to be back. I love the running back group. Peyton Lewis, Deshaun Bishop, one of them could be the next Dylan Sampson, lead the SEC in rushing yards. Plus, you're bringing Star Thomas from Duke. That's a really good foundation in place. And I think that Josh Heupel knows what he wants to run. Go back and look at 2022, the magical season that was when they got the win in the Orange Bowl. Like, that was a team that had an identity on offense, knew it could run the football with ease, knew it could pass, knew that if they were able to get the team to corral the box or their opponents to corral the box, they would take the deep shots. And then you had a Cedric Tillman, you had a Jalen Hyatt, you had Brew McCoy, you had decent tight end play. Your offensive line, headlined by Darnell Wright, also was pretty stable. But that's where we kind of are when it comes to the next part. I like Nico Iamaleava. I think Nico Iamaleava was not the problem down the stretch. You look at where the team struggled, it was at the wide receiver position. It was in pass pro. It was keeping the quarterback upright and not having to run for his life like a chicken with his head cut off. He was actually, by the season's end, one of the better players for Tennessee's offense. And I'm nervous that right now, the offense doesn't have enough pieces to where Nico has to be the guy. He's a great game manager. He'll get you to 10 wins. I have no doubt about that. He'll take you to the college football playoff. But is there that second punch? And what is that second punch? What's the level of juice? Is it the mobility? Is it the fact that he can make plays that were broken up? Is it his ability to call audibles at the line of scrimmage to put the team in better situations? And the thing is that in college football, it's not just a one-man sport. Everyone has to step on up. And the wide receiver room, as much as I think it's good on paper, production-wise, it's very limited. Can Mike Matthews be that number 1 guy going into year 2? Can we see Chris Brazzell take that next step forward? What about Braylon Staley? Or what about Amari Jefferson coming on in from Alabama? Can one of them be a constant threat at number 3, along with Ethan Davis and Miles Kitselman at tight end? Until I see it, it's really hard for me to put my chips all in the pile on Rocky Top rolling in 2025, but I'm not going to doubt them. If you told me they went 9-3 or even 10-2, I could buy it. And the same thing for Alabama at plus 700. It's a one-year fluke for Kalen DeBoer. I understand that there will be a lot of people not wanting to buy the stock into DeBoer because of what we saw last year. 4 losses, 3 of which were almost inexcusable. The Tennessee game, for as much as I want to go ahead and give flack to Jalen Milroe, Tennessee was good enough to go to the college football playoff. You can understand that loss. What about Vanderbilt? how the defense played, especially a week before when you saw the faults and the chinks in the armor when you went up against Georgia and you were up by double digits and then down going into the final 2 minutes. What about the Oklahoma game? What about the Michigan game? The Michigan game to me is inexcusable. But you look at where he is. He's the right guy for the job. We all have our faults. We take that first test. The progress report comes back. It's a 70. We say, okay, well, what do I need to work on? I got to get better at multiplication. So what do? You add more weapons to the receiver room. You do a great job of building a top-tier recruiting class, number 3 in the country. You bring back a Ryan Williams. You move Jalen Mbakwe from defense to offense. You bring in an Isaiah Horton, who would have been the number 1 at Miami. Now he's going to be the number 3 here. You have Cole Adams coming back fully healthy. You bring in more running back talent to replace what you're losing in Justice Haynes. You pair him alongside with Jam Miller. You upgrade your offensive line. You let players walk like Elijah Pritchett. You bring in guys like Cam Dewberry. You go trust the process and land a kid like Campbell that's coming on in from the IMG Academy and believing that he is going to be a day 1 starter. But there are still questions, and I understand that. And that's where, if you don't want to bet Alabama right now, okay, so be it. Who's QB1? Keelan Russell, Austin Mack, Ty Simpson. What do we get for the running back room? Who's going to step up with Jam Miller? Because that should be a point of emphasis when you look at this offense. How much more are we going to see of Kalen DeBoer's unit? The one that, made headlines and got to 11 wins in year 1 at Washington and then went to a national title appearance. How much more are we going to see from the younger guys getting a bigger role in the defense? Because all of these guys are DeBoer's players. So I'm not doubting the maturity of the locker room. I'm not doubting that they're going to continue to grow because I watched what happened in Seattle the last 2 years, and it was one of the best runs that Husky football has ever seen. But I am going to have my doubts when it comes to Alabama making it to Atlanta. And if you have your doubts, I totally understand it. LSU at 1,000, this is one of those common themes to when I look at Vegas. They know what they're doing. Vegas is trying to pry you on it. It's a Venus flytrap. It's waiting on open. It's like, hey, look at what LSU's done. Look at what LSU has done this offseason. Brian Kelly, he's figuring some things out. You may want to go ahead and bet. Clap. Done. Then they go 9-3. And now they're not even going to the college football playoff. But here's the thing. Maybe, just maybe, LSU is finally built to win it all. There are real expectations out of Baton Rouge every single year. Compete for a conference title, win 10 football games, be in the hunt for the college football playoff, win a title with a new head coach every 5 years. And everyone has accomplished those goals. Ed Orgeron did it. Nick Saban did it. Les Miles did it when it was the BCS era. They were always constantly winning when it came to top victories against Alabama or Georgia or Florida. They were holding their own in the SEC. And Brian Kelly's done less with more. Or let me phrase that. Done more with less and less with more, actually. Look at the team that he built together in year 1 as the new head coach at LSU. Went and beat Nick Saban, went to Atlanta, had a roster good enough to get to 10 wins, but not a good defense. Year 2, better offense, better execution, a quarterback good enough to lead you to a national title, a defense that gets you out of the college football playoff. And so they've made adjustments, and Brian Kelly is figuring these things out. I am a Brian Kelly apologist, and I'm not going to apologize for that. He's too good to fail. He just is. We hear of all these coaches from time and time and time about how James Franklin can't win the big one, or how Ryan Day can't win the big one, or how Jim Harbaugh couldn't win the big one. And it took him 10 years to win a title down in Ann Arbor, the school that he wanted to bring poise to. And I say to myself, so you're going to tell me that Brian Kelly, who is the second most winningest coach currently in college football, can't get the job done at LSU? Guys, he's changed his ways. He has. I mean, look at this coaching staff right now. If you go through and see all the names that are on there, whether it be Blake Baker, Joe Sloan, Frank Harris, you throw in Lance Guidry they just added in from Miami. You throw in the brand new guy in Alex Atkins from Florida State to work with the offensive line. You know what they all have that is very common? Ties to the state of Louisiana. So every single 5-star that walks into that building should be back at least a second time. And basically every single time a 5-star says, I want to go to X school, the first thing should be LSU, and then what should I expect moving forward from another team to pay me an NIL? They have a returning ample talent at wide receiver. They brought in newcomers like Nick Anderson. They also keep back Aaron Anderson. I love the addition of what they bring in at tight end with Donovan Green. They also brought in a lot of defensive talent. It's year 2 underneath Blake Baker. This team should be on paper good enough to hoist up a national title, but it also is on paper. And I'm very skeptical of that because if I thought 2 years ago they were good enough to win a national title and they went 10-3, And I thought year one, when Brian Kelly came on down and he was able to get the best version of Jaden Daniels, then this team was going to be good. And you know what? They got to the SEC championship and then they lost. So I'm very skeptical that it finally happens. They have a top 10 recruiting class. They got some young players like DJ Pickett and Solomon Thomas who should be day one starters. But I am going to be cautious with this one. What I'm not going to be is cautious with the next one, Ole Miss at plus 1,000. This, my friends, is my favorite play because at some point, we just have to embrace who Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin are. A flawed but fun team. And if I can give the benefit of the doubt to Tennessee, and I can give the benefit of the doubt to Alabama, and I can give the benefit of the doubt to LSU, I got to give it to Ole Miss. Look at what they get back next year. Austin Simmons for a quick cup of coffee in the Georgia game was exciting. He was awesome. He's a lot bigger than Jackson Dart, 6'4", like 225 pounds. He's got the same mobility. He's also got a cannon of an arm, and he's built that relationship with Caden Lee. They also rebuilt the wide receiver room with Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest, Harrison Wallace from Penn State, Caleb Odom from Alabama. Luke Haas comes in at tight end. That's a quarterback's best friend as a young player. It's a new and experienced offensive line. Like, it's brand new, but every single player that is there that's joining the team has at least 10 starts underneath their belt. They have a solid running back room. Defensively, they're in a very good spot. Yes, they're losing guys like Princely Uwin-Manley-Ellen, but Prince Will Uwin-Manley-Ellen is waiting in the wings to go ahead and start. So family tradition down in Oxford. And then I look at their schedule. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that you guys are paying enough attention to what Ole Miss's schedule is. They host Washington State without John Mateer, Tulane, LSU, South Carolina, and Florida. So one of those games that they lost last year in horrifying fashion, they get at home. They also get a Florida team that we don't know what to expect at home. They avoid Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, and Texas A&M, plus Auburn. Their two toughest road games are back-to-back weekends in October when they play against Oklahoma and Georgia. And if you're not a believer in Brett Venables, then you are a believer in Lane Kiffin. They should win that game. So split the series, go 5-1 at home this year, lose one other game, you're 10-2, you're in the college football playoff. And 10-2 at this point, when you look at Texas, when you look at Georgia, when you look at Alabama, LSU, here's the bottom line. I hate to break it to you, folks. That's good enough to get you to Atlanta. Who would be shocked if the year that we all decide to punt on Lane Kiffin, this is the one that finally works out? I wouldn't, and that's why I'm actually taking that play at plus 1,000 with FanDuel right now. Some quick hits right now. Texas A&M at plus 1,600. Here's the bottom line. I'll believe it when I see it. I think that they're in a good spot with Mike Elko. I like the defense. I like the offensive approach. I think they have some players that are going to hit their peak this year underneath Colin Klein offensively. But I've heard this song and dance so many times, I just got to see it to actually believe it. Same thing for South Carolina at plus 1,600. If you were to ask me right now, I believe South Carolina is a playoff team. I believe defensively they've added in the right pieces in the personnel to make up for what they're losing to the NFL draft. And they got a special quarterback. Lenore Sellers is different. He is a one-of-one machine, and best of luck trying to slow him down. But I don't believe that right now they're a conference champion. I may feel differently about this after spring practice when I see the relationships with the wide receivers and the offensive line. But I do think that when you look at South Carolina, they could get to 9-3 or 10-2. And they sure as hell are going to ruin someone's chances. They play Alabama at home. They play LSU this year on the road. They play Ole Miss on the road this year. They could win 2 of those 3 games, knock both of them out of the college football playoff conversation while punching their ticket in and missing a shot at Atlanta. Missouri at plus 5,000. The disrespect of Vegas. Seriously, the disrespect of Vegas. Do you understand Missouri's schedule is literally one of the easiest in college football because of what they are enduring? They don't leave Como until mid-October. The first 6 games are at home. They feel good about the quarterback room with Bo Pabula coming on in from Penn State. I like the wide receiver room better than most. I think Kevin Coleman's going to break on out in Kirby Moore's system. On top of that, they also bring in Ahmad Hardy. If you haven't checked out his highlight reel, ladies and gentlemen, on a Saturday, if you're not interested in college basketball, just go ahead and watch what Ahmad Hardy did this past season at Louisiana Monroe. Phenomenal year, over 1,300 rushing yards. Stable offensive line. I thought that Corey Batoon did a phenomenal job replacing Blake Baker last year. They've added in some really good defensive players like Josiah Trotter from West Virginia. And their schedule is the same as last year. So instead of traveling to Columbia, South Carolina, to College Station, Texas, and to Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, they're going to be hosting those teams. So I'm talking about this Missouri squad that last year went 10-3 with a relaxed schedule. They could go 10-3 again this year with a relaxed schedule. And finally, Florida and Oklahoma. Florida comes in at plus 3,300. Oklahoma comes in at plus 6,000. I understand why you want to buy some stock into them. And you know what? I may or may not throw a little bit of money down on one of these teams. Which one of these teams? Probably you should just go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll do a video on it. By the way, if you're still here watching, make sure that you hit the thumbnail, also the like button and the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC Unfiltered. They are quarterback-based. Florida, you want to see more growth from DJ Lagway. You want buy-in and culture from what the team has done. You want to see more development from the offensive line, which was a very studious offensive line headlined by All-American Jake Slaughter. You want to see the defense take another step forward. I think that they will be fine with Ron Roberts running the show. I think that some of the players that they've added in from the transfer portal, very talented. I really think that when you look at Florida, so long as they get to 8 wins next year with a schedule that's basically the NFL's, that's good enough to say Billy Napier, the right guy, going into year 3 of DJ Lagway. We're okay with that. But I also could see where they hit their stride way too early. They get a few upset wins. And lo and behold, we're going into the final week of the college football season. And as long as they beat Florida State, they're punching their ticket to the college football playoff. And Oklahoma, I'm a believer in Brent Venables. Sue me. I like what he does defensively. I think he made a smart move going out and hiring Ben Arbuckle, who is air raid-esque, but not entirely the same way as Mike Leach, rest in peace. There's enough to like about what he does extremely well. And he's got the quarterback in John Mateer. I don't care if you play at FCS football level. If you score 45 touchdowns and put up over 4,000 total yards of scrimmage, plus you add that mobility and a good understanding of the relationship of what the offense wants to be, I'm going to have faith in you. I like what they brought in at wide receiver with Isaac Satenga. I like that they have Deion Burks back. I think the offensive line will be better underneath Bill Beatonbow in year 2 of the SEC. They got some young players that are going to have to step on up. But I like this team. I think they're in a very good spot. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think about this team? What's your favorite play right now? Who do you think is somebody that is going to step on up and be over-exceeding expectations for your opinion in the SEC? Sip of coffee real fast. By the way, SEC Unfiltered is proudly fueled by FanDuel. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because FanDuel is the home for NBA live betting. So even if you miss the first few minutes of the game, or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from first whistle until the final buzzer. And you can also do this in college basketball. Plus, you can even combine your live bets and same-game parlays for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, it's the perfect time to join. And if you haven't joined already, well, just listen real fast. New FanDuel customers will get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So lay down $5, win that bet, get $150 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment count with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Disclaimer: must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issues as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after the receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problems? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in chat in Connecticut or mdhelpgambling.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, who's the most predictable team in the SEC for 2025? I think you know where this is going, and it is very cruel for me to say. So I want to start off by saying, let's just rip the Band-Aid and call a spade a spade. Texas A&M, it's you. I'm sorry. I know that you don't like hearing that. I know the 8-4 jokes are tiresome as all hell, but let's just call it as is. Until proven otherwise, why am I going to doubt you at this point? Because Texas A&M has been a team that has written the same script every single year since joining the SEC. And then every few years, they add a few tweaks, they make a few edits, and then lo and behold, they're going to a bigger bowl game. They're getting to 10-plus wins, or they're getting to 9-plus wins and should be in the hunt for the college football playoff. But Texas A&M has had the same mantra and story for a while now. And every single offseason, we see pundits and we see reporters and we see people hyping up the Aggies like they are the next big thing. And I have been a problem with that. And I have been. And I apologize to the Aggie Nation. I apologize to the 12th man. I apologize to you, Jimbo Fisher. I apologize to you, Mike Elko. I do. But now it's just one of those things where I kind of have to see to believe it. Because A&M's schedule is once again going to lead to the same type of results. They're going to win a game that they probably shouldn't. Last year, LSU game, they were down by double digits. They make a switch at quarterback. Connor Wigman's out. Marcel Reed's in. Well, Blake Baker, he's not prepared for the mobility of a quarterback. No, he believes that they're going to play against a pocket passer. And Marcel Reed takes off running and single-handedly gets one of the biggest wins of the Mike Elko era, if not the biggest one of the Mike Elko era at the time. They won a game that they probably shouldn't. That's going to happen again this year. Look at when they play against a team like, look at when they play against Notre Dame. Like, imagine they go to South Bend after last year playing against a really, really solid Notre Dame team. And they march in and they kick the keister out of them. You get really good running back play from Amari Daniels. You get it from Le'Veon Moss. You get back a fully healthy Reuben Owens. And they win that game on September 13th. And now they're sitting at 3-0 going into the bye. And then they come home. And then they beat Auburn. And then they beat Mississippi State. And then they win a game that they probably shouldn't, like I've already talked about. Florida is that interesting team. Florida may be overhyped at that point. Florida could be coming on in, and they could be sitting in a really good spot with games against LIU, USF. They could be beating LSU. They could beat Miami. They may even beat Texas. And then they play Texas A&M. So they could be 5-0. They win that game. And now A&M is sitting high and mighty. Then they're going to lose a game they shouldn't. As is tradition. As always is tradition. A&M for years would struggle against teams that were out of their opponent. And sometimes it would be Arkansas, and sometimes it would be Mississippi State, and sometimes it would be Ole Miss that wasn't as good on paper as what we said. And they ended up losing that game, and everything started to unravel at that moment. That's going to happen at some point. Maybe it's to South Carolina that we're overhyping right now, and they're not as good. Maybe it's to Missouri on the road coming off a bye week. They win the game against LSU, and then unfortunately, they just can't find their footing. And then they close out the year on a losing streak, as is tradition. Losing to a team like Texas, losing to a South Carolina, maybe beating an LSU, but then losing to Missouri. And then lo and behold, they were sitting at 7-1, and now they're sitting at 8-4. That's the A&M script. And it's been the A&M script for a while. And I like what A&M's done this offseason. I said that A&M would be a team that should compete for a college football playoff berth because of who they added in at wide receiver. Kevin Concepcion from NC State was one of my favorite playmakers in the portal. That was my wide receiver one and my number one offensive weapon. And he's going to College Station. I like the offensive line. I think there's stability out there. I like what you have with Mario Craver. I like some of the names you brought in defensively, like Julian Humphrey and Samuel Pemba. I like the fact that you still have Des Ricks coming on in. I like the fact that you're going to have Terry Bussey potentially playing two ways next year. I like the fact that you have stability on the defensive line. You've added some really good pieces in the portal. You have a top 15 recruiting class. A&M's done all the right things. But every once in a blue moon, A&M outshoots its coverage. That's now the new norm when it comes, in my opinion, to Texas A&M. They're over-exceeding expectations. Because the expectations, it feels like, are 8-4. And they're going to stay that way for a while. I'm not sure what I'm getting in Marcel Reed. I think Reed is an exciting player. I think Reed is the perfect fit for what Colin Klein wants to run. But I'm not sure that if you put him under duress, he can deliver a big-time performance. I got to see it. I got to watch him be down with a minute left, drive those 97 yards, find a connection with Casey Concepcion into the end zone, 6 points. They win the football game. I got to see it. And until I do, it's hard for me to buy in. Because A&M has been the exact same model since joining the SEC. Outside of 2 years, 2012, they have a breakout season from Johnny Manziel. Comes on in, delivers exceptional performances, beats Alabama in the house that Nick Saban built. And they go 11-2. And it's not good enough to go to a national championship, but by golly, it's good enough to go to a big-time bowl game. And then in 2020, they have Jimbo Fisher, good culture, veteran team headlined by Kellen Mond that doesn't get enough respect in College Station for my money, good wide receiver play, exceptional ground game, good stability on the offensive line, a physical run defense. And they lose to Alabama in week 2. They get shut out. It's like 42-14. It's like actually 38-0 at one point. And then they go on a run. Unfortunately, because Ohio State did win the Big Ten, they gave them the nod and Notre Dame the nod. And so they take their frustrations out on North Carolina, win the Orange Bowl, and then you hear Jimbo Fisher say, "We ain't done yet." Well, sorry, Jimbo. Yeah, you were. That was the highlight moment of you, and you haven't gotten back to 10 wins since. I think that A&M on paper should be a team that we talk about in a more prominent light because they have the resources. When you hear people like Josh Pate and others talk about what A&M has, I've seen it up close in person. He's not lying to you. A&M is at its peak moment where they have all the utilities, all the resources, all the state-of-the-art complex equipment, all of the natural things that other programs like Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama and Georgia and Texas, and you can throw in Florida potentially, and some teams that we haven't even talked about like USC and Oregon all have. They have everything there to be sustainable. Be a team that's not only good, but competitive, and competitive in winning the right recruits, winning the right transfers. They have the money. And best of all, they also, I think, have the right coach. But for years, they didn't have that last factor. They didn't have that last element. Mike Elko is a meat and potatoes son of a bitch. That is who he is at his core. He doesn't deliver any nonsense. He doesn't care about your background. He doesn't care about your story. He doesn't care about how you got here, what you're making in NIL funds. If you are the best 11 on the field, it's because if you earn the right to play. That's Mike Elko. And I believe that A&M will go to a college football playoff at some point. I do. Probably when it's 14 teams or 16 teams. That might happen. But I'm not ready to buy on in just yet to the stock of, well, Texas A&M went out and spent a lot of money in the portal. They do that all the time. They had a top 15 recruiting class. They've had that for a decade. Now they have a schedule that's very manageable. They've had manageable schedules in the past. Until proven otherwise, I was talking to a buddy of mine, Chad King. Chad, if you're watching this, tell your son, Ben, can't wait to see him in the future. A&M is a team that you can always expect. They have the same three requirements every single year. Win a game that they probably shouldn't. Lose a game that they probably shouldn't. Struggle against 2 or 3 teams that could go either way. Look at their schedule. They win against Notre Dame. They win against LSU. They lose to Arkansas and Fayetteville. Struggled on the stretch. Finished the year off 8-4 with losses to Missouri, lost to South Carolina, lost to Texas, and then they're playing for the Gator Bowl or the ReliaQuest Bowl, or maybe they're going out to the Music City Bowl, or better yet, they'll go out to Las Vegas and they'll spend a lot of money and then they'll lose to a Big Ten team that was masquerading as a Big Ten team that probably should just stay out in the Pac-10. But I'm not going to dissolve on what happened with USC and why relocation and allocation is done with all that process. By the way, if you're watching, make sure that you like the video and hit the ring notification. We have over 400 people watching live right now, so it'd be great if you just hit that subscribe button as well, because we're talking college football every single day. Thank you to all of us who helped us get to 20,000 this past week. We are at a new goal. We would like to be, by the start of March Madness, 25,000. So if you could tell a friend of yours and then tell that friend to tell another friend, and then continue the chain pecking order about how we get in contact with people, we should reach that goal. So thank you in advance, but just make sure that you're telling everybody about SEC Unfiltered, the number one SEC unity in all of the land of the YouTube sphere. Yeah, YouTube sphere or Facebook sphere, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so Lenora Sellers, Cam Newton. This is not a dig at Lenora Sellers. I want to make this abundantly clear. Most of you know how I feel about Lenora Sellers and how if you talk to anybody in South Carolina, they will tell you that this kid is special. And they knew he was special. Spencer Rattler did a great job of stabilizing the program for Shane Beamer. But when he left in 2023, a lot of people were understanding about it because he's like, well, we got this kid from Florence, South Carolina, 6'3", can move, can truck a monster, got a can of an arm. He's got that it factor. And he does. But now we're seeing pundits and national narratives come on out and saying, built like Cam Newton. And I've tried to make it abundantly clear, but I've even gotten some DMs from people saying, Cole, you're comparing him to Cam Newton. Why are you having this conversation? I'm not trying to compare him to Cam Newton. I'm not. But we have to retire that narrative. There are certain players in the world of college football that we have grown up watching, that we have fallen in love with the game with, that are just never going to be duplicated. Johnny Manziel is one. You can't convince me that there will be another player who stands 6 foot, that moves the way that he does, that can make plays behind the line of scrimmage, improv like no one's business, and then deliver a strike downfield for 6 points. There is just nobody built like Johnny Manziel and what he did for Texas A&M to stabilize them into the realm of the SEC in year one. There's nobody, so we don't compare him. And the same thing goes for Cam Newton. Do you remember the story of Cam Newton? Well, for those of you that have forgotten, let's go ahead and sit on down, have a history lesson. Goes to Florida, was expected to be the starting quarterback at Florida, gets expelled from the university and kicked out of the football team because of the laptop situation. So what does he do? He goes to Blinn Junior College, goes down to Blinn, wins a national title at the JUCO level. The most sought-after quarterback prospect at the JUCO level in probably college football history. Mississippi State wants him. They nearly get him. Auburn goes after him. They do get him. Does anybody remember what happened with Auburn the year before? It was dreadful. People were so pissed off down on the plains when they hired Gene Chizik from Iowa State. Like, you think that people were freaking out about the Brian Harsin hire? It was worse with Gene. The guy didn't have a winning record when he was at Iowa State, which made it that much more dreadful. He was 5-19. And then year one, they go 8-5. And they're saying, okay, it's fine. Nothing to write home about, but we can live with it this year. And then they get a quarterback in Cam Newton. And Cam balls out. Just second to none. No questions asked. What he accomplished will never be duplicated. Leads his team to an undefeated season, 8-0 in conference play, a 27-point comeback in the house of Nick Saban in the Iron Bowl against the Crimson Tide. Gets significant wins over teams like Mississippi State, overtime win against Clemson. They beat up on South Carolina. They beat Kentucky. They kill Arkansas when they were the number 12 team in the country. They beat LSU. And it's all Cam. No really big help at wide receiver. No really big help at running back. Decent, not great offensive line. Solid, but nothing to write home about. He ends up throwing for over 2,000 yards. Finishes with 30-plus touchdowns. An average of 10.2 yards per attempt. Wins the Heisman, an All-American, the Walter Camp Payton Man of the Year, and, of course, the Maxwell Award. He also rushes for over 1,400 yards, 20 touchdowns on the ground. He was averaging 105.2 yards per game. On top of that, he also had 1 touchdown reception. No fumbles. He was a lightning bot in a bottle. Did everything right. Everything that you wanted to see. There is nobody who will do that again in the world of college football. Ever. Just ever. Because the game's changed. That was 2010. And remember, Michael Dyer, if his knee goes down, we talk about Cam probably in a different light. Still one of the greatest college football seasons we've ever seen from a player, but definitely not the same respect that we have right now. Cam was a one-man wrecking crew and single-handedly pulled Gene Chizik, along with maybe the help of Nick Fairley and a few other couple of highlight players, Philip Lutzenkirchen, rest in peace to him as well, over the line and into immortality down in the plains of Auburn. I like Lenore Sellers. I like DJ Lagway. I think both of those players going into next year are two of the rising stars in this sport. And more importantly to me, what that stands for and what that signals is such a good spot for two teams that I like rooting for. I like seeing be good at football. College football is better when the Palmetto Bowl means something. It's better when Florida takes on Florida State or they take on Miami and both teams are ranked. It means something. There's some significance about the world's largest outdoor cocktail party having 2 top 15 opponents that hate each other inside of Jacksonville. It's something miraculous, and they have the quarterbacks to do that. But there is never going to be a world where in college football today, you will see a player carry their team single-handedly. Joe Burrow was the closest, and even he had 2 future all-pro wide receivers. He had 2 future Pro Bowl offensive linemen, and he had several players on the defensive side that would be drafted and pretty much gain significance in the NFL. Like, Joe Burrow was one of the greatest single seasons we've ever seen statistically in college football, and they beat Alabama with that Tua Tagovailoa-led team, and it still is not even in comparison to what Cam Newton did. That's how I personally feel. So, I know that people are going to talk about what Lenore Sellers can be, what DJ Lagway can be, with the arm strength, with the mechanics, with the footwork, with the mobility, with the vision, with how they are able to take over games. But that does not mean that they are the next Cam Newton, because there will never be another Cam Newton. So for the sanctity of everybody that covers this sport, loves this sport, and appreciates this sport, if somebody you know is comparing Lenore Sellers or DJ Lagway, or for that matter, any quarterback to Cam Newton and what he will be in 2025, I am giving you permission. This is from me. You can tell the police to call me to backslap them as hard as possible. Or if they are a national analyst doing that comparison, block them on Twitter, give them the bird, and say, have a nice day. And I will defend you for that. Show me proof and evidence. I will get that done. But we are done with the comparisons on one of the greatest college football players to ever exist, to a guy that we still don't know what his full potential is. just yet. So please, let's temper our expectations. And also, let's just temper our expectations for both DJ Lagway and Norris Sellers, because the last thing I want to see is both of them ending up having underwhelming careers, which really wasn't underwhelming. They just didn't meet the narratives of the fans that said they got to be like Cam Newton or else. Or else what? What's going to happen? You're going to stop rooting for the team on Saturdays? I've heard that story a million times. I'll hear it once again later. By the way, I just tried this new sweet vanilla coffee. Really, really good. If you haven't checked it out, it's an espresso machine. Kirsten got that for us for I think it was Christmas or something. It was really good. Really, really good things. Real quickly, like the video, hit the ring notification. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you don't miss out on a single bit of coverage going into the college football season, because we're not done anytime soon. We still got spring practice right along the way. Summer workouts where we're going to be doing live shows. And then we also have fall practice. Also, Dave Shoemate and I are working on some things to where this will not be the only time potentially you see me on Sundays. So just keep that in the works. And next week, we are going to start a Q&A. We are going to do that. I want your questions. Email me at colethompsonwriting@gmail.com or DM me on Twitter, which is why you should follow me over there at Mr. Cole Thompson, because we're going to be doing the Q&A, and we're probably going to be doing it around lunchtime on Tuesdays. So noon, 1 o'clock, 11. Give me a time which works best for you. That way you can watch the live stream. We'll do about 20 minutes every single day. Okay, who is my most excited player that is not getting talked about enough going into 2025? Spoiler alert, it's with a team that I talk about a lot. So if it's Auburn, sorry, folks, you're not going to hear anything from me. If it's Kentucky, sorry, folks, you're not going to hear anything from me. If it is Missouri, I think you know where this is going. It's going to be Kevin Coleman. So Kevin Coleman, for those of you that don't know, was one of the best wide receivers in the SEC last season. He was at Mississippi State. Before that, I believe he was at Jackson State. And then before that, he was at Louisville. So he bounced around a little bit in an offense that was headlined by supposed to be this new passing attack with Jeff Levy, with inconsistency at the quarterback position because of Blake Shapen gets hurt. And then you throw in, of course, Michael Van Buren as a freshman. Kevin Coleman was one of the best receivers in the SEC. 74 catches, 932 yards, 12.6 yards per attempt, 6 touchdown receptions. He had 5 plays of over 40 yards downfield. And now he's going to go to an offense that knows how to cater to wide receivers. Don't believe me? Well, one wide receiver by the name of Luther Burden won an All-American when he was playing underneath Kirby Moore. And Theo Wease was the most complimentary number 2 that you could ask for in the SEC. And now he gets to go join that unit. This is going to be, I think, a breakout year. Kevin Coleman took over games in 2024. 6 catches, 118 yards against Ole Miss. 8 catches, 100 yards against Arkansas. 8 catches, 90 yards against Texas A&M. 8 catches, 103 yards. 12.9 yards a play against Georgia. 7 catches for 77 yards against Toledo. 4 catches, 103 yards against Arizona State. The dude in the biggest games for Mississippi State last year was the Mr. Consistent Playmaker. And now he's going to be working with another quarterback that we don't know a lot about in Bo Pabula. They're going to have a good ground game with Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts. But who is your number 2? Who do you feel like is that guy right now in Missouri? Is there a guy right now? Is it Marquise Johnson? Is it Brett Norfleet at tight end? Is it one of the up-and-coming wide receivers? Is it somebody that we haven't talked about enough from last season? Is it Joshua Manning? I can tell you right now that one of them is going to have to break out, because if not, Kevin Coleman's just going to be hitting the stride and being literally the GOAT of the SEC. But even if not, when you're able to get that trust in the quarterback, which is so prevalent these days, to be able to have that X factor of, no, dude, I got your back. Just throw it up there. I'm coming down with it. That could be something that changes the game. And then I've already talked about Missouri's schedule. Missouri is lucky with how their schedule bowed out next year. Start off the season against Central Arkansas, Kansas, which we are going to respect Kansas because Kansas is a good team. And that is the very last thing that Lance Leipold wants you to do, ladies and gentlemen. Think that the SEC is too good for little old Kansas, and then they march on into Farote and they kick your ass to oblivion. So we're going to respect them. Louisiana, and then they play South Carolina. South Carolina early in the season with a new offensive line, with some new weapons that they're adding in at wide receiver, some young guys that they're trying to catch up to speed, you may catch them slipping. I'm not saying it will happen, but you may catch them slipping. It's a brand new secondary too. That's a game where you're saying, hey, Kevin Coleman, go on off. Bye week, Then you go ahead and you welcome in Alabama. UMass, then bye week. Then you welcome in Alabama. Travel afterwards for the first time in October 18th. Back-to-back weekends to Jordan-Hare and the First Bank Stadium to face off against Vanderbilt. Bye week. Close out your year with 2 games at home. Texas A&M, Mississippi State. On the road against Oklahoma. On the road against Arkansas. That could be in a span of, 7 games? We talk about Kevin Coleman as leading the SEC in receptions, leading the SEC in receiving yards per game, yards per contest. And he may end up having only like 6 touchdowns, but that's not the stat I'm looking for. I'm looking at who can be that X factor every single play for a quarterback to go, I got you. I'm coming down with it. Don't even worry about who's on the outside beside me. I'm winning this battle one-on-one. And if that happens, Missouri's in the running like they are. People want to doubt Missouri because of, again, they're a flawed team. If you told me that when you look at the Missouri team last year, if they were a 10-win roster, there'll be people that say, oh, well, that was the worst 10-win team in college football. You got to 10 wins. There are no bad teams that get to 10 wins. It was maybe an overrated in terms of, they would have lost in the first round of the college football playoff. But if you get to 10 wins, you have stability. If Missouri does it again this year, and let's just say they don't lose to South Carolina, like they almost did last year. Or let's just say they beat Alabama or they beat Texas A&M and then they lose those 2 games, the ones that they already lost. So then they beat Oklahoma in sporadic fashion. They go crazy against Arkansas and they're 10-2. 10-2 is getting you in the playoffs in the SEC. It's a guaranteed common threat. It's not slowing down. And you may end up thinking, oh, well, here we have this guy to thank, Kevin Coleman. He reminds me a lot right now when we're talking about the transfer portal realm of players that aren't getting enough praise, like Matthew Golden. So Matthew Golden last year comes on into Texas. Nobody really has any idea what he's going to be besides special teams. Everyone's loving Isaiah Bond. They're hearing about this kid from Corvallis, Oregon that's going to have lightning in a bottle speed. They have this guy, Jonte Cook, that's supposed to be the number 1. Ryan Wingo's a 5-star. We love him. And it's like, oh, cool. Be wide receiver 3, I guess. And he ends up leading Texas to multiple wins, security blanket for Quinn Ewers, and eventually is so good that now we're talking about him as a day 1 prospect in the NFL draft in April. Can that not be Kevin Coleman? Could it not? Because he's already shown you in the SEC, I'm good enough to win multiple games. I'm good enough to be that X factor number 1 receiver. I've got the speed. I've got the physicality. I've got all the tools needed in my belt to be able to win battles against cornerbacks. I can find my way into the end zone. I'm playing for a better team than Mississippi State. I'm playing an easier schedule for a team. And also, if I end up building this rapport with Bo Pabula throughout spring practice, who's to say that by week 1, I'm not putting up monster video game numbers to where everyone's like, hey, who was this Kevin Coleman kid? Well, just remind yourself, ladies and gentlemen, Cole Thompson here told you about Kevin Coleman. He's a freak. He was a superstar. He was my top receiver in the regular season for the SEC in the SEC Unfiltered Award Show, which we are still keeping around. You're going to see him have that same type of success next year. I promise you. This kid has all the intangibles, what you want a wide receiver 1. And he may be a reason why Missouri, who I am very high on, I know my MIZ Nation, I know you love me, reason why we are talking about Missouri punching their ticket to a 12-team college football playoff. I'm just saying, crazier things have happened. We watched as SMU in year 1 of the ACC win the playoff. So don't doubt out, I think, a team like Missouri at all. If you're still watching, make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we're talking college football every single day. We got some projects in the works that we are very excited about that I can't unveil just yet. But if you stick around long enough, I promise you, we will have that announcement later on this week. We're finalizing some things on that. Real quickly, college baseball started this past weekend. And for us here at SEC Unfiltered, we are really into college baseball. Like, we are probably, and not to my own horn, the number 1 entity when it comes to college baseball in the SEC. We love it. We're passionate about it. But we also know that there are some stories that you just can't write. Cade Ballou's mom passed away on Friday. Cade Ballou is an outfielder for Auburn. Season opener. Valentine's Day. Says that he wants to play in this game. Long battle with cancer. Wants to play for his mom. 6th inning rolls around. 2-1 lead. Comes to plate. College football gods couldn't write a better script. Blast to the right center field wall. Home run. At the end of the day, that is why you fall in love with sports. Moments like that. Do you guys remember when Jose Fernandez passed away and he was out in Miami, and then D. Gordon with his first at bat, who is not known for hitting home runs, uncorks his first home run of the year while wearing 16's jersey, and he rounds home, and you see the emotions finally weigh all over him. It's a moment to where if you're not a fan of just that team, you're a fan of that moment because you understand what the brotherhood of sports is. It's why I tell everybody in life, play sports. Even if you end up sucking at it, even if you only play for 2 or 3 years, the camaraderie and the relationships and the team buildings that you will use as skills throughout the rest of your life, they ring true in those moments. And Cade Ballou didn't have to play that night. He could have easily missed the game, been with his family, celebrated the life and legacy of his mother, and instead he chose to honor her and give us a gift as college fans. I don't care who you root for. I don't care what team you are associated with. And it's why I try to stay as neutral as possible whenever doing these shows. I like that I am very much a common ground, a voice of the people that is not going to ram down your throat Alabama content, Texas A&M content, or Arkansas content. I'm going to call it as is, whether I like the team or not. When moments like that happen, you have to stand and cheer. Because at the end of the day, that's what brings us all together. The camaraderie of loving something like a sport. When we have a bad day at work or whenever we're frustrated because of a project's due late, we end up turning to sports as our comfort zone. We end up turning to sports as our safe haven. We end up turning to sports as a life thing that just keeps us moving. When we have a fight with our significant other, or we're dealing with frustrations with our older parents, or delaying the inevitable of what will be our eventual untimely passing, we turn to sports to shut out that outside noise. Cade Ballou did the exact same thing on Friday night for the season opener with Auburn, forgetting about losing his mother, who will never see him play another game, who will never see him step foot on a diamond again, his pathway to the pros, at least in person. But in one moment, not only changed the outcome of a game, but also made us as college sports fans come together and realize this is why we love sports. Moments like this, cherish them. Cherish them as much as you can, because you never know when your last day is, and more importantly, you never know who your last day is going to be with. So that'll do it for us right here on SEC Unfiltered. I got some content in the works. Make sure that you like this video, hit the ring notification, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. And we are going to be back on Sunday Funday next week. Thank you for being patient with me last week. I had a bunch of things going on coming back home from New Orleans. Also, real quickly before we get on out of here, I would like to give a shout out to my brother Kyle, and to my sister-in-law, Scarlett, and to my niece, who part of the reason why I didn't do a live stream last week was I was at the gender reveal and found out I'm going to be a first-time uncle. So, Nitch, whatever you are, whatever we're going to call you, just know that Uncle Cole here does this for a living, and he wants to make you proud, and he's going to turn you into a better sportscaster than I ever was. So, like the video, hit the ring notification. Make sure you follow us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Until next time, folks, I am Cole Thompson. I will be back next week, and I'm sure I'll see you around. By the way, don't take life too seriously. You're not getting out alive anyways. Peace.